Anoiteceu o dia 22 de outubro de 1844 e Jesus não voltou, como esperavam os adventistas. Mas a manhã seguinte veio, e com ela tristeza, decepção e, para alguns, humilhação.
And when he met a neighbor, they'd say, "What are you doing here? Thought you were going up." And it sounds kind of funny, but it wouldn't feel funny, I don't think.
Why does God work out of disappointment? Could it be that disappointment is a filter, a grid through which we pass, and in the passing through, there is something that gets purified. There's something that becomes resilient. There's something that shines. There is this phoenix out of the ashes. Now, out of that disappointment, our hearts are caught up with greater embrace and expectancy over what turns out to be God's methodical, patient unfolding of His divine will.
Ao perceber que Jesus não voltara, um fazendeiro chamado Irã Edson e seus amigos, que estavam em sua casa naquele 22 de outubro, choraram amargamente. Na madrugada, eles se reuniram no celeiro para orar e pedir auxílio divino. Mesmo em dúvida, porém confortados, eles saíram para consolar outros adventistas, e foi no caminho que Edson teve uma ideia do que poderia ter acontecido. Em certo sentido, a Igreja Adventista do Sétimo Dia nascia aqui, quando aquele fazendeiro contemplou a Cristo.
I think the thing that we could say about Hiram Edson is he's someone who wanted to follow the Lord. He wanted to follow what God wanted him to do. He wanted the truth. And of course, after the disappointment, he has that experience of going through the cornfield. Some people call it a vision. I think that's pushing it. And this is how our sanctuary doctrine develops, the idea that Jesus didn't come back to earth in 1844, but he began a special end-time work in the most holy place of the heavenly sanctuary.
Essa doutrina é importante por uma razão muito simples e que o cristianismo perdeu de vista. A salvação, biblicamente, sempre deriva do santuário.
Outra verdade já compreendida por alguns poucos mileritas antes do grande desapontamento passou a ser assimilada e propagada depois daquele 22 de outubro.
After the disappointment, out of the confusion of that disappointment emerged Sabbatarian Adventism. We say Sabbatarian Adventism because they hadn't taken any name. That's just our name for them. They just called themselves Advent believers who kept the Sabbath.
A história dos adventistas do sétimo dia passa por Washington, New Hampshire, e alguns até dizem que foi aqui que de fato tudo começou. Quando um grupo de pessoas abraçou a fé na segunda vinda de Cristo, unindo-se ao movimento milerita, e depois, ao ouvir o testemunho da professora Raquel Oakes, uma batista do sétimo dia, também aceitou a verdade a respeito do sábado. E a pequena igreja aqui, que um dia já recebeu Tiago e Ellen White, J.N. Andrews e Joseph Bates, continua abrindo suas portas aos sábados, sendo a igreja adventista há mais tempo em funcionamento em todo o mundo.
But that church started just as a community church. It was a Christian church, not Adventist, not even Sabbath keeping. It was just a Christian, Sunday keeping Christian church. But then it became a Millerite congregation before the disappointment. And of course the stories that I'm sure you already looked at of Frederick Wheeler and Rachel Oakes, who comes there and her daughter's teaching school and she wants to be with her. She's a Seventh-day Baptist and she introduces the Sabbath to Wheeler. And the others, at first they aren't interested, but God helps Wheeler. Wheeler accepts it. And he becomes a very important early Sabbath keeper.
A verdade sobre o sábado foi publicada num panfleto e chegou às mãos de um homem chamado Joseph Bates. Como viajante dos mares, o capitão Joseph Bates era certamente uma grande fonte de notícias para a cidade portuária que vivia do comércio e da caça às baleias. Porém, foi enquanto caminhava sobre a ponte que existia exatamente neste lugar que Bates compartilhou a grande nova que mudaria para sempre não apenas a sua vida. Enquanto caminhava por aqui, ele se encontrou com seu amigo James Madison Monroe Hall, que lhe perguntou: Capitão Bates, quais são as boas novas? Ao que Bates lhe respondeu: meu amigo, as boas novas são que o sétimo dia é o dia do Senhor. E foi assim que Bates compartilhou pela primeira vez a verdade que havia descoberto.
Fairhaven is the home place of Joseph Bates. And of course, the three founders of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, Joseph Bates, James White, Ellen White, each played a role. Ellen White had a prophetic voice, we've talked about that. James White was the organizer, publisher, the mover and shaker of the movement. Joseph Bates in the early years was the theological founder. He's the one who was bringing together the theological framework in a very unique way. It's the Sabbath that comes finally through him, of course to him and then through him in the movement. And then the sanctuary linking to the Sabbath is Joseph Bates again, this idea of the importance of proclaiming the Sabbath in the last days. These are theological core concepts that come from Joseph Bates.
Entre os que passaram pela experiência do desapontamento, uma jovem recebeu uma missão especial.
Every major epoch of sacred history has had a prophet who's saying, hey guys, something's about to happen. Now, look, would it be logical for a God who has done it here, 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 before the greatest event in the history of the human race, in other words, the return of Christ, visible, personal return of Christ to earth, would it be logical for God to say, you know what, yeah, I had him down here, but I don't need a friend now. You just figure it out. You people just figure it out. You'll get it. Can you imagine God doing that? Are you kidding? He's done it here, he's done it here, he's done it here. And so I believe that at the end of time, like John the Baptist, God says, I'm going to have a friend. In fact, he found a 17-year-old girl, a 17-year-old American girl. And he says, hey, listen, I'm coming back. Would you be willing to tell the story?
Was Ellen White the basis of the Seventh-day Adventist Church? It's not fair to say that. I teach development of SDA theology and teach these classes here at the seminary and have for a number of years. Ellen White is one of the founders of the church. That's fair to say. Her and James White, Joseph Bates. But they would never think or say that it's founded on her or even on her visions. Because a study of the movement shows that it was God leading them in their study of Scripture. So the movement was really message-driven from the Bible. And Ellen White saw her prophetic ministry as two things. And this is really important if people want to understand Ellen White and her role. She was there to take us to Jesus. Her emphasis upon Jesus and upon salvation is so powerful. And second is to take us to Scripture. So her writings take us to Scripture. They are not her writings. They're Scripture that she's pushing us to read and to look at. So it's not built on her. It's built on a biblical message.
I am absolutely convinced that the ministry of Ellen White, as a woman, is a ministry of a friend of God who brings to a generation who has ears for God the word, don't quit now.